careful.
holidays. Everybody have good Christmases, Hanukkahs, Happy New Year. If you don't have a food processor, you've got 2 pieces of butter here that you got in advance. You've got a big piece and a little piece. You're going to remove the little piece. You don't need that right now. And you're going to cut the other piece into really small pieces, because that's what the food processor is going to do for us that have one. But if you don't, cut it into really small pieces. I would say, like, I would probably cut 3 strips this way, 3 strips this way, and then down. So that way you have like little nuggets that we'll be adding to our recipe. So that's just the pre thing that I wanted to bring up with you. And then we'll also make sure, if you have a brush, like a pastry brush of some sort, we're going to use that. Or if not, we use a paper towel. We can use that too. And we'll want to make sure we have a bowl and maybe a spatula. And then if you guys have one of these handy dandy little guys, this is it's like a pastry cutter, but also I think technically this shape is called a bowl scraper. I've never used it for that. I only use it for my buttermilk biscuits, really. And so, yeah, I think we'll get started, but I can try to keep you guys off of mute. I love hearing your feedback, and we only have 9 people today, so it may be easier to manage. But if you find that it's too loud in your household, feel free to put yourselves on mute. But if you want to be a part of it, feel free to unmute yourselves. And so we'll get started. Now you have this, oh, but first I want to put a very special happy birthday out to Mr. Freddie. Freddie is 2 years old today. So hi, Freddie, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Freddie. He gets to make biscuits on his birthday. That might be the best thing ever. These biscuits are actually a modified version of Fox and the Snow biscuits. So if you guys ever go to Fox and the Snow bakery and you have their biscuits, which my teenage son is, well, my older teenage son is obsessed with, and my younger one is becoming slowly obsessed with, they're amazing. So they, at the beginning of lockdown, they put out the recipe, and that's the only kind I make now. So this is a modified, smaller version of it. But we'll get started. So this bag of flour that you have, it's a little bit more than you need. We're going to take out a 1/4 cup of it. So if you have a 1/4 measuring cup, we're just going to kind of lightly scoop it and kind of shake it there. You don't want to really pack it in. When I fill up my cup, my measuring cups, I usually use a spoon and I lightly fill it, and then I'll use this guy and I kind of scrape it off. But for the 1/4 cup, it doesn't really matter. You're just going to lightly scoop it, and we're just going to set that aside. We don't need that 1/4 cup right now. We'll have it on hand when we're actually preparing our biscuits, just in case we need a little extra. But what we need is what's in your bag minus that 1/4 cup. And we're going to put that into a food processor if you have it. If not, you're going to put it straight into a bowl. So you've taken your 1/4 cup of flour out of this bag, and now you're going to put the rest of the bag into your food processor or bowl if you don't have a food processor. So it's a great opportunity for the kids to get a chance to measure and use the 1/4 cup there. And then we'll just pour the rest into our food processor. All right, so that's just flour. And what I used today was this big guy, the King Arthur flour. I love this flour. I'm not getting paid by them, by the way. Maybe I should to promote it. But the next thing we're going to put into either our bowls or in our food processors is you have a little cup of a small bit of powder. In that is salt, and there's baking powder and baking soda in there. So we're going to add those into our food processor or into our bowl if you are not using a food processor. So that just dumps right in there. This is going to help let everything kind of get mixed in together. Oh, and I forgot my little sugar packet. I'm gonna go grab my sugar packet because that's gonna be the next thing. So we put our little thing of our little container of powder in there, and I have it.
Allison.
Yeah.
Sorry. So it was salt, baking powder, and what else?
That's all combined in your ingredients. So you have a little your little container of powders. That's
Okay.
Ingredients kit, and that's the salt, baking powder, and baking soda all mixed together. All you need to do is
One?
no,
Okay.
that's cream.
That's the cream. You already put it in that thing.
Oh, I see. It
It
was
was already pre-mixed
okay.
in there.
Got it. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. No,
Okay.
that's all right. So we're putting that container in here as well into our food processor, or you put it straight into your bowl if you're not using your food processor. And Rebecca, just make sure you got the fact that we took out a 1/4 cup of flour. You got that? Okay.
But what did we just put in besides the baking that
That little
else?
container and the rest of the flour. So the flour minus the 1/4 cup that you
Right.
took out and the little powder.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're fine. You're
You're
fine. All good. If you have your sugar packet handy now too, you're gonna take that. I don't even know what I just did with mine. Oh, there it is. You want about half of the sugar packet. You don't need the whole thing. So you can either pour it into a bowl and have your kids take a teaspoon out or so, or you can just I always just hold on to about half of it and dump the other half in. You don't need the whole sugar packet, just about half of it. Now, if you've put all this into a bowl, this is a time where you want to mix this with a whisk right now or a spoon or something. You just mix those things together. Mix up all those powders, make sure they're all combined. The next part is going to be our butter. And if we're putting it into the food processor, you don't need to cut it into small chunks like the other folks did. I just cut it into, slices basically. And I dump that into the food processor on top of the flour that we put in and the other things. And the butter that you put in, that you sliced, I want to make sure you guys took out the little 1/4 stick. So I have it separated. You have a little 1/4 stick. Sorry, I should have said that ahead of time. And a 3/4 stick. The 3/4 stick is the part where you want to put into the food processor. The little 1/4 stick, we're going to hold that aside. We don't need that yet.
And you said to cut this up a little bit?
Yeah, I would cut it. I kind of slice it into chunks and then I put it in to the food processor. Are you using a food processor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. So we've got our little 1/4 stick, or if you dumped everything in, fish it out, sorry. And take that, put the little 1/4 stick aside. We're going to use that later. But we've got our 3/4 stick kind of cut into our food processor. This is a time, if you're using just a bowl, take all those little slices that you made and you can put them into the flour mixture that you have in your bowl. And when you mix your food processor, I have a pulse one, so I just kind of pulse it until everything's mixed. It doesn't have to be so blended in. You can still see like small little chunks of butter. That's okay. But I'm gonna blend it and I pulse it just for a few times till it's all blended together. I'll put it on mute so it doesn't kill the sound. So I've pulsed it a few times and I'm gonna pour it into the bowl. I don't know if you want to see what it kind of looks like here, but you'll see it sort of looks chunky. Not huge chunks, but you can still see bits of butter in there. If your kids went nuts and blended it like crazy, that's totally fine too. It's not going to be the end of the world, honestly. So I have my mixture here. If I put my hands in it, I can kind of feel the chunks, little chunks of it. And if you have, if you're just using the bowl and not the food processor, you can use a whisk. You can also use one of these things. This is like a pastry cutter. If you got one of these, and you just kind of roll it around and mix the flour in with the butter. This is also a fun thing to do sensory wise. I see William's already doing it. You put your hands in and you can kind of mix your hands into the flour. And if you have big chunks of butter, you can have the kids squeeze them and break them apart. And like I said, varying chunks of butter is fine in here. You just want it kind of all mixed through. It'll all come together in the oven, I promise. Your hands are gonna get a little messy and that's okay. That's totally fine. Now this is one thing, you know, it's really fun to taste batter a lot of times when we make like cookies and things, but I have to tell you, biscuit batter is more fun to touch than it is to eat. It's not gonna taste very good. And raw flour, a lot of it kind of makes our tummies hurt. So we're not gonna eat this flour really. I mean, if you eat it, it's not gonna hurt you. It's just not gonna be very, very satisfying. Wait to eat the dough when we do cookies next or something. But we are gonna, you've got your flour here, and I sometimes make a little hole in the middle of my flour in the bowl. You don't have to. If you want to, you can. Makes it more fun. And now it's gonna be time to put in our buttermilk. This is something you can put your finger in and taste. Now you guys have a cup of it. Well, you have a little cup, it's a half cup measure. But you have a cup that I gave you of buttermilk and you can smell it. That is cream. You want to use the bigger cup. Yes, the cup with the green line around it. Yep, that's your buttermilk. You can smell it. It might smell a little sour. They actually say to make buttermilk, you put vinegar in and you let it sit. I just buy it. So you can have the kids put their fingers in and take a taste. See what they think. I've actually come to like the flavor because I like buttermilk biscuits so much that I actually like the flavor of it. But you can have them put their finger in and taste that buttermilk, or at least smell it. And then we're gonna pour it into our little hole into that bowl. Now we're gonna incorporate it. Now we don't want to crazy mix it all together because it might bring out too much like gluten out of the flour. So we're gonna kind of lightly mix it. And we're actually gonna pour it out onto the table before it's completely mixed. So you want to get all the liquid out first. So you're gonna use your spatula, or you can use your hands. And you can start to, I sort of just kind of go around the edges and I start incorporating my buttermilk. I just sort of lightly do it. I don't stir it like crazy. I'm kind of lightly mixing it together so most of the liquid gets absorbed, but you're gonna still, it's gonna seem really dry and flour-like. And this is where you still have, I'm just gonna scrape off my spatula. This is also a fun time to use your hands. And you're gonna have stuff stuck on your hands, kids, but that's okay. We can wipe it off. If you have like a damp towel or something, you can use that. It's also a good time to take rings off if you got rings on. And you're gonna incorporate this. Now I pour it out onto my table when it's still kind of flour-like and crumbly. You may have a little bit of liquid there. That's okay. And I just scrape any of the wet that's on there and I put it down. And you're gonna think, whoa, I didn't do this right, but you did. I'll show you. I don't know if I can get a close-up of this. My hands being super floury. But it looks kind of just like a mess, really, right now. It's still, you got some dry parts, you've got some kind of wet, saturated parts, but this is what you want. This is where I start using my hand.
Miss Ellison, I'm so sorry. Are we pouring all of the buttermilk into our concoction?
Yeah, you
Okay.
pour all the buttermilk into the center of the bowl, and then you are gonna just incorporate it kind of loosely around. It's funny, Fox in the Snow, they use the description of shaggy till it's shaggy, and that's kind of a good description because it's not really all come together as a dough yet. As we start forming our biscuits, that's when it's gonna come together. So it's gonna stick on your hands a little bit. And I'm gonna show you, let's see if I can do this. I'm gonna show you how I do it. Now you can use a spatula, or you can use like that pastry cutter that I have. If you have a spatula, you may want a bigger one than the one I've got here. So with the pastry cutter, I'm gonna show you, I kind of form it around. You can also use your hands at this part, and I kind of make it into a rectangle. I know it's really loose and dry, and I sort of pack it together. This is where if you're on a counter, you might need to use that extra flour if it's sticking like crazy, or you could put some flour onto your hands and it may help for it to not stick. But I've formed it together here. And this is where we're gonna start folding it. At first, it's not gonna seem like it's folding right. You're gonna have crumbs everywhere. But we're gonna keep doing this process is we're gonna fold it. Here, I'll go from this direction. So I slide something under you. If you have a spatula or something, you could slide it under. And I fold it over like a book. The first fold is gonna be really crumbly. But we're gonna form it again, pack it down, form it into that rectangle. We're gonna fold it again. And we're gonna keep doing this. What this is doing is creating all these lovely layers inside our biscuits. So I pack it down. I go from, usually I'll pack it into a rectangle horizontally. Then after I fold it, I pack it into a rectangle that's like a, like going vertical. And then I'll fold it again. Doesn't have to be perfect. Mold it into a rectangle again. I do this probably 6 or 7, maybe 8 times. I take it, the half, I fold it over. Every time you fold it, you bring the outside little crumbs back into the mix and push it down. So it's slowly now coming together. I fold it again. And after they're baked, you're gonna realize this is so worth it, this step. When I first was making biscuits, I didn't really do it that much. Now I know to do it a lot. Fold it again. I'm gonna change my view here for the people that I'm recording for so that they can get a better view. How are we doing? Is everybody okay? We're folding, we're smashing. Folding again, so you're gonna see it's really coming together now. Not as crumbly as it was before. When you've done it a few times and it seems like it's all sort of tight, it's gonna feel kind of dense and you don't have as many crumbs, this is the time when we can start breaking it up. So I'm gonna do a couple more. Looks like everybody's still working a little bit. So we fold it over, push it down. Like I said, if it's still a little sticky, you can put a little bit of flour on your hands. Or if it keeps sticking to your counter, you could put a little bit of flour on the counter underneath. I'm doing this on my dining room table, so that's why I have parchment paper under it. Usually I would just put it straight onto my counter. You'll get to a point where you don't really need your little thing to slide under anymore. You can even just fold it. But now mine feels pretty dense. And you want it kind of thick. So let's see if I have something that you guys have that you could measure against it. But I would say, you know, maybe an inch tall. Now, honestly, it can be as tall as you want. When Fox and Snow makes theirs, theirs is like really, really tall. Now, here's where you have the options. So the easiest route, if you don't have biscuit cutters, and even if you do have biscuit cutters, one of the easiest routes to take is you can cut it into pieces. I'll use either my pastry cutter, or you could use a knife, or you could use a spatula. And you can make it, I would say maybe 3 or 4 pieces, because you want them pretty big. I'm gonna take out an example in a minute that's in the oven so you can see what they look like afterwards. But I had cut mine into 3 big chunks. If you have biscuit cutters, and tell me if anyone's using biscuit cutters, let me know, because I'll make sure I show you an example. I'm gonna take my little small one here. I got these for Christmas, my son. I was asking all year for biscuit cutters, and my son got these. So yeah, that's great. So they're probably gonna be about 3/4 to the top of your biscuit cutter, the dough itself. And sometimes I put a little bit of flour around the edges. You might not need it. But when you use your biscuit cutter, you're gonna push straight down. Get your little biscuit out. I love these star ones because I have so much crunchy areas for surface. But when you do that, you'll see all these layers that you made. And these layers are gonna puff up so much, you won't believe it. They're gonna really grow in the oven. The other thing you can do if you don't have, and then after you have your if you're using biscuit cutters, after you take your pieces out, then you can. Oh, can you take that out of the oven for me? Thank you. After you take your pieces out and you're using the biscuit cutters, and you can kind of smush it together again. Do a little bit more of that folding to kind of put it back into position of where you had it before. If you are not using biscuit cutters, this is where it's the easy part for you. Thank you. If you're not using biscuit cutters, then you can just use a knife or your spatula, and you're gonna cut it into pieces. We're gonna separate them out. But like I said, maybe 3 or 4 pieces, depending on how big you want them, but they'll grow. Before we put them into the oven, we're gonna brush them. And if I hadn't said earlier, we wanna preheat the oven to 375. So we're gonna brush them, and you had a little container of liquid, and you have an egg. This is the fun part. We just want the egg yolk out of this. And we're gonna put the egg yolk in with that cream that I gave you into a little bowl. So you may need an extra bowl to put the white into, but this is perfect for the kids to try on their own. And kids, with your help, your hands are gonna get a little messy, but that's okay. So you want to crack your egg on something else. Crack it over something that you're not the cream yet. Crack it all around. We're gonna try to do it in the middle. If you crush it, that's okay. You can fish it out of the bowl. But if you can get an even crack around the edges, I slowly open mine so that I'm catching that egg yolk, the big yellow part there. That's the part we want to keep. And I kind of go back and forth from each half. to get some of that white out. And the white is actually clear, it cooks up white. But we don't want that white part. We just want the yellow part. And that's what you're gonna mix in with that cream. Your hands are gonna be a mess, that's okay. You can use a fork to whisk the cream and the egg yolk together. It's gonna be this light yellow pale color. Once you have that light yellow pale color, you'll get your pan. Hopefully I'm not gonna burn the table. And I will just brush them while they're on the pan that I'm gonna bake with. So I take my brush, or you can use a paper towel, into that pale color, or you can even use your fingers. And you're gonna paint the tops of them and the sides, paint all around. What we're doing here, it's kind of called an egg wash, but we're not cleaning them, are we? We're putting this all around. It's gonna make this amazing, crispy edge that's gonna be light and golden brown. You'll put these in the oven for about 30 minutes. So you wanna paint the tops and the sides. Get them covered with this yellow stuff. And if it drips onto the pan, that's okay. And that's when you're gonna put it out, put it in the oven. Once they're in the oven, they're gonna bake for 30 minutes, and then they're gonna come out. You have one last step to do once they're out of the oven. So this was mine. I cut mine into thirds, like I said, before class, and I baked it. And you can see the golden brown tops. And see how big they are? They're humongous. Before they cool, the one thing you want to do is take that little bit of butter that you had left over. You've got butter, and I want you to microwave that butter. And you're gonna add honey to it. So you have a little container of honey. So this is after you get these out of the oven. This is what I'm showing you to do. You have your melted butter and you've got honey. You're gonna add your honey to your melted butter and stir. My melted butter's been sitting since the beginning of class, so it may not be as melted as it should be. This is your honey butter. And before these guys cool down, you're gonna take your honey butter after they're out of the oven, and wipe your honey butter all over the tops of these once they're out of the oven. They're gonna be nice, they'll be hot still, so be careful. You'll cover these with your honey butter. And then what I usually do before they all dry and cool down together is I take some sea salt and sprinkle them right on top. I have my sea salt, so I'm gonna use my little kosher salt. So you can take sea salt and sprinkle on top of that honey butter. Any salt will do, but sea salt's always good. That's what you're gonna do when you take them out of the oven. So you microwave your butter, your quarter stick of butter for about 30 seconds, let that melt, then you add your honey, and then you'll put them on top of your biscuits when they come out of the oven. So 30 minutes at 375. Make sure they're nice and golden brown. You'll see that depending on how you folded them, or if you use biscuit cutters and you put it together, you'll see sometimes they make these crazy shapes because they might have been cut earlier, and some will go this way and that way. They're all good. You put your honey butter on top and let that all cool down with the sea salt. And I gave you a little bit of some of my favorite jam, which is this stuff on sale at Costco. And I'll like cut them in half. I'll put my favorite jam on in the middle and eat them. Delish. So how are we doing? We good? You guys excited? Any issues? Give me a thumbs up. Everything work out all right with everybody? Awesome. And Freddie, I hope your birthday biscuits are amazing.
Thank you.
Good birthday.
I just wanted to double check. It was the yolk and the cream that we were mixing together and sprinkling on top, correct?
The yolk and the cream you put on before it goes in the oven.
Okay. And
And
so we
then the honey and the butter you
is
put on after.
got
Yep.
it.
Yeah, the yolk and the cream will help give this really golden brown texture and some crispiness on the outside. And then the honey butter just like takes it to another level of yumminess with a little bit of salt on top. That's really tasty too. So good luck. Send me pictures if you can so I can see how well you did and how they turned out. And please enjoy them. And next week, if you haven't signed up yet, we're going to do a berry crumble. It's one of my favorite things to eat in winter. So thanks for joining me. Send me pictures. Bye, guys. Have a wonderful day. Have a great weekend.
Yeah.
Bye. Thank you.